Elements of Harmony and Savior of Worlds by Arcade Striker 5. Chapter 4.
And if you look at item number 200, you will see that unemployment has dropped slightly. But this is probably due to the receding changes gearing up for the Grand Gallopy Gala. Chairman goal shipments to the Dragon Clans are proceeding apace. As you can see in Tot A subsection.
Celestia sat on her throne as the Minister of Economics. A cream-colored earth pony with the cutie mark of a closed thick book stood in front of her with an easel and pile of charts and bound papers. She propped her eyelids up with magic and used all her self-control to clamp her mouth shut and not yawn. Various other members of the Equestrian Senate stood around in the princess's main chambers, most of them sitting on their haunches, yawning or just plain dozing off. A pair of unicorns, the Minister of the Interior and the Postmaster General, had set up a card game near a pillar, and darned if Celestia wasn't tempted to join in. The earth pony grabbed the edge of the chart of the easel with his lips and pulled it off, his tail simultaneously wrapping around another, lifting it up.
Now, we had a slight disruption near the trade near the Griffin territory, but that would be more the purview of the tail pony as joint chiefs of staff. However, there's an absolutely fascinating rise in the GDP near Buffalo Lands at the town of...
There was a sudden puff of smoke. Several members of the Royal Guard materialized around Celestia, and the various officials, weapons in mouth, wing, or floating in front of their horns.
Secure the chambers!
One particularly large Pegasus shouted, dropping down from the ceiling.
Protect the princesses! Bullhead, corral the ministry together for evacuation! Stop her! I want all exits in and out!
His voice trailed off as the smoke cleared and a scroll hovered for air.
Or not!
He cleared his throat and looked up at the princess on her dais.
My apologies, Your Majesty. I thought it was...
Celestia bowed her head to the Pegasus. No problem, General Spanish Seal. She looked over the Senate and cleared her throat, focusing on the minister standing with his chart. Mr. Busybody, if you don't mind, I think it would be good for me to read a report on friendship from my prized pupil, Twilight Sparkle. You so deserve to rest your voice after such a long and informative report. She stretched her mouth into a rather wide grin and looked down at Busybody, drawing herself up to a full height and squaring her shoulders and forelegs. Busybody stepped back. The letter unfurled while Celestia glanced to the side at a small end table with tea kettle and cups. The tea kettle glowed and floated up, pouring some still warm chamomile tea into a similar floating cup. While Busybody walked around to Celestia's side, the princess took a sip while pre-reading the layer a case of editing. The cup floated over, perfectly level and not even disturbing the tea inside up to Celestia's lips. She sipped it while her vision drifted over to the word Megan. Celestia's eyes bugged out. The teacup suddenly dropped to the ground and shattered, echoing across the chamber. She whipped her head around and spat out the tea directly into Busybody's face. What the flying Hun? She shouted, wings unfurling. She backed up, stumbling across the steps leading up to her throne power for Impossible! The members of the Senate backed up as the guards hurled around Celestia. Dead silence permeated the chamber, save for Busybody, muttering to himself and wiping his muzzle. Celestia read the letter again, then twice back and more before telekinetically rolling it back up. She looked around the room and chuckled, wiping her forehead with a wing. Well, my apologies for that, Busybody, she said, focusing on him and grinning slightly. That was rather rude of me. Busybody shook his head.
It's all right, Your Majesty. These things happen. Usually not from you, but they happen.
He looked around.
Does anybody have a tunnel ready?
Celestia turned back to the rest of the Senate as he floated a towel from her tea over to him. Well, apparently Twilight is going to be learning a very good lesson about friendship from one of the masters herself. She chuckled and her horn glowed. Sorry, but most more urgent matters have to be attended to. There was a brief flash of yellow light enveloping Celestia. When it faded, she and the scroll were gone. Celestia winked back into existence and looked around, quickly orienting herself. She trotted along the dark corridors, taking some time to admire the paintings of night skies, spiraling murals lining the walls. The only sound was her hooves striking the tiled floor, laid out in various constellations. She approached the double door with two members of the Royal Guard standing guard. The two guards' ponies, a Pegasus and Unicorn, both clad in onyx-colored armor, bowed and separated. Celestia nodded to them both, and smiled as the double door swung open. She stepped out into the private quarters of her younger sister, as the door closed behind her with a thunk. Luna? She half shouted, Luna, where are you? She walked through the darkened living room, avoiding a couch and chair by memory, and entered the bedroom. Finding the goddess of the night in bed, a pillow over her head, snuggled under the pillows. She walked over. Luna, you'll... She tossed it aside as the pillow stayed low. Never guess. She tossed back as the wind-up alarm clock nearly sailed over her horn. What Twilight just... Her horn glowed, and the dresser stopped just short of smashing into the alicorn. It floated over to where Celestia continued talking. Set me. Luna shrugged off the blankets and slid out of her bed, her dark purple coat almost blending into the shadows. Her horn glowed, and a lamp on the end table clicked on. She winced slightly, and one of her wings came up, covering her eyes while she adjusted the sun brightness. Oh, Sunny, it's... The alarm clock floated over and under the wing. Well, okay. The alarm clock's broken. The wing lowered as she looked at her older sister. What's the time? Celestia glanced over at the dresser, leaning against the wall, and it slammed against the wall, embedding into stone. Noon, she said, grinning. I mean, it's not too early for you to be up, is it? Luna's teal eyes narrowed, and she snorted. Steady! The scroll floated over to Luna's face. She raised a hoof and batted at it, backing up and away from it in front of the bed. Just a second, I'm parched! She walked out, returning a minute later with a glass of ice water. She sat down on her haunches, while the scroll floated back over her the line of sight. She took a long drink from the glass as she skimmed the note, but whipped her head around and spat out the water directly into Celestia's face. Megan! She shouted, wings flaring up. She suddenly looked back to Celestia and swallowed. Sorry. The water dripped off the princess's snout. I suppose I deserved that. She just deadpan. Oh well. Luna, can you believe it? Megan's back! I mean, how long has it been since we've seen her? Celestia's gaze drifted to the ceiling. She bit her lip, hopping up and down on her hooves, not like a certain pink-earth pony. Oh, I have to make so many plans. There's so much to do now. Like taking care of that rogue dragon in the Everfree Forest, Luna remarked, winking at her older sister. Celestia waved her off with a hoof. Oh, I'll contact King Spiker and the old. He'll need to know about Megan, too, she rubbed her chin. Maybe we should invite... You are not inviting the Grendels! Luna interrupted, looking down her nose and muzzle at Celestia. The princess ponies, definitely. Her eyes suddenly lost focus. We only have a few hours to see each other when I return from the moon, and a smattering of other visits from them. Are they still there at the heart? We never really talked about it much. Celestia nodded, her gay expression gone. As our mothers guard the heart guards them. Her smile quickly returned. And they missed you almost as much as I did when you were gone, she said, lowering her head and neck and leaning them against Luna in the pony equivalent of a hug. We were all so glad for your return. Luna returned the hug, smiling through misty eyes. She suddenly broke the hug and began pacing around the rather cramped bedroom, a thoughtful expression on her face. I missed them too, but it brings up another question. She spun around to face her older sister. Sally, it's been 1,500 years since we last saw Megan. She walked forward. And you and I both have read about human lifespans and health from the books you brought over. Celestia blinked and nodded, twisting her lips in thought. I have a theory about that. But I need to go to the point of entry to determine if I'm right. The smile slowly returned to her mouth, and she looked back up at the ceiling. But I have another place to be. She suddenly flashed, disappearing from the room. Luna blinked and groaned. She began walking to her bed, the blankets and pillows rearranging themselves as she walked over. She hopped to the bed as there was another flash of light. Celestia reappeared suddenly as she had vanished, her wings tucked in close to her body, and her almost ethereal mane and tail, normally flowing in even the calmest of weather, had settled down and almost drooping. Not there? Luna asked. Not there, Celestia muttered. She glanced out the door into the room beyond. And now that I think about it, I kind of left the meeting of the Senate when I got the letter from Twilight, when Busybody was in the middle of a presentation. Luna's mouth opened in silent shock. You didn't? Him? You'll be lucky if any of the Senate is conscious when you get back! She shook her head. Sally. Celestia grinned back before running out the back room, tossing a goodbye over her crest and withers before leaving. Luna watched her go. Don't forget about the land of Spiker-On! she called out to Celestia as she left her quarters proper, before the blankets floated back over her and wrapped themselves around the goddess of the night. She laid her head against the pillow as the alarm clock placed itself back onto the nightstand beside her bed. She looked at it and groaned. The two guards separated and bowed as Princess Celestia left. The Pegasus, a young gray-coated stallion, looked over to the older unicorn.
This is probably the most excitement I've had all week,
he half whispered, waiting for the alicorn to disappear from sight. The unicorn, a mare with a solid red coat, snorted. Let's be grateful that you're not on the border duty near the Griffin Empire. Things can get nasty out there. She looked straight ahead, showing off the scars on her face, almost covered by the helmet she wore. Besides, Princess Luna's the easy one. Stayed here for 8 hours while she sleeps, and the door slowly opened, and Luna peeked her head out. Hey, are you going to be on call duty at 5 p.m.? At her nods, she grinned. Great! Come in and wake me up until then, all right? My alarm clock fell off the desk. The unicorn blinked. I see you, Majesty. Well, like you are playing. Luna threw her forelegs around the unicorn and Pegasus, pulling him for a hug. Thanks! See you then! She turned back to the door, but paused. Just make sure to wake me gently, all right? I'm not exactly what you call a morning pony. And with that, she disappeared back into her quarters. A pregnant silence hung in the air between the two members of the royal guard. Finally, the Pegasus spoke up. Isn't 5 p.m. naturally early? That's like a gal. The unicorn responded. That's like a gal. She looked at him and cocked her head to the side. That's the immortal goddess of the night in there. Do you really want to question her about being a morning pony, or do you want to pack your saddlebags for the Northern Frontier?
Morning pony it is, then!
Chapter 5. Megan watched as several of the younger Pegasus ponies flitted about the sky, Wind Whistler and Firefly guiding them in instruction. After a few minutes, Wind Whistler dove for the ground and landed near the teenager. Are you all right? Wind Whistler asked, cocking her head to the side. Megan shrugged as the two friends began walking around the grounds of Paradise Estate. I don't know, tell you the truth. She kicked at the ground, sending a stone tumbling on. Lavon's dead, and the princess ponies have the Paris back, but what now? What new threat is out there to try to take you all out? Wind Whistler paused and rubbed her hopeful chin. Your words are logical, but we have faced down many dangers before, and will again. Dream Valley and Ponyland is dangerous, even in the best of times. Megan whirled about to face the Pegasus. Well, are there other groups of ponies out there? She looked to the sky as the baby Pegasi landed and the sun shut down. There's the big brother ponies and the princesses and the flutter ponies, but are you the only ones? The Pegasus shook her head. Negative. Our enclaves are scattered throughout the land. If one group is destroyed, the others can survive and carry on. Her head lowered, and she closed her eyes. We've come across remnants of other groups before you came along, Megan. There was silence before Megan closed her eyes and balled her still small hands into fists. Well, it's not right! She shouted, startling others nearby. Why do innocent ponies who have never hurt anyone have to suffer? Why can't something be done to help you out? Heartthrob trotted over, her daughter in tow. But what can we do, Megan? Megan's brow furrowed and paced a bit. The big brother ponies are due here in a week. Well, they're not leaving! Wind Whistler, get a list of all these other groups of ponies together. I think it's about time we take back the valley! Wind Whistler turned and extended her wings, but stopped to look back, staring at Megan. She held her gaze, boring deep. Megan! 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 Megan snapped her eyes around the twilight spike, blinking. Wait, what? She swallowed and scratched the back of her head. Sorry, just thinking about some old friends. Twilight rolled her eyes, while Spike clenched his claws over his mouth to hide his giggling. might want to pay attention, Megan. The Everfree Forest is one of the most dangerous areas in Equestria. There are all sorts of creatures here, and a lot of them wouldn't mind having a pony for lunch. Or a dragon, or you. Megan nodded and cradled her rifle, stepping lightly. She looked around the Everfree Forest as strange sounds and shadows lurked about just at the edge of her vision. Is it just me, or is this way too dark, even accounting for the canopy? Twilight shivered slightly. Ugh, The Everfree Forest has been like this for 1,000 years. It's wild, untamed, and pony magic simply doesn't work here. Even the princess's son could barely sign through it. It was, whoa! What's the poison joke? She said, hopping away from the blue leaf plants. Megan slowed down, allowing Twilight to pass her on the path to avoid the joke. What does it do? She asked, looking down at it. We got poison oak back home, but not joke. She looked over the small blanket of the joke. What does it do? You don't want to know. Twilight craned her head around and leaned back, opening her mouth and shouting. Megan, Spike, Rarity, and Pinkie Pie followed suit. Each one shouting at the top of their lungs as they followed the trail of recently made horseshoe imprints in the ground. Imprints down to the ground twice as deep as normal tracks. Fluttershy kept her eyes on the tracks, and for any sign of struggle or injury while Rainbow Dash raced ahead, scouting what lay ahead. A nearby bush shook, and the group halted. Megan raised her rifle and inched her hand close to the trigger. But Fluttershy tried it over, sticking her nose into the bush. I know you're in there, the yellow Pegasus said, voice somewhat louder than usual. Come on out! Fluttershy backed out of the bush as a serpentine animal with green scales, short arms and legs, and the head of a chicken slithered out. He looked to the others of the group, but Fluttershy immediately floated over, landing in front of it and spreading her wings. No, Mr. Crocodile, she taunted. You're not going to harm my friends, are you? At the nervous shake of its head, Fluttershy smiled and patted it on the head with a hoof. Good boy. Now, tell me where Applejack is. Megan blinked and lowered her rifle. What's he doing, Twilight? A cockatrice, doesn't that? She suddenly glanced to her right, where Twilight was standing with Spike on her a second ago. Megan's head darted about. Twilight, where are you? Megan looked over her shoulder and saw the unicorn standing behind her, shivering. She knelt down and placed a hand on her shoulder. Are you all right? Twilight swallowed and nodded, still thinking. That thing turned me into stone a couple of weeks ago. I'd be dead if it wasn't for Fluttershy using her stare on it. She peeked around Megan and saw Fluttershy still interrogating the creature. This is kind of why I wanted everyone to go in at once. Strength in numbers and all. Fluttershy approached, head ducked low. He said he saw Applejack run this way, but he didn't do anything to her. She tossed her mane back and eyes wide, vibrating. If he had, there's no telling what I would have done. She suddenly noticed Twilight, Megan, and Spike staring at her and backed up. If that's all right with you. Megan leaned back, away from the Pegasus. Let's just keep going, she said, hopping to her feet and walking off. She saw Rainbow Dash dart around a bend in the path. See anything? She shouted. Dash flew back and shook her head. Nope, but there's plenty of uprooted plants, and even a tree with some rather distinctive horseshoe imprints on it. She tickled slightly and rubbed the back of her crest. I think we better get moving, she said, any trace of humor gone. If she reaches the dragon, she won't hold back. She turned back and waved the group on before flying back off down the path, everyone else following in her multicolored wake. The woods cleared slightly, and a loud rustling eclipsed the background ponies. Megan looked down at Twilight as they hurried down the path, rifle clutched tightly in her gloved hands. How far is this dragon's cave? She asked, breathing heavily. Twilight shook her head and galloped along, Spike hanging on for dear life. It's farther ahead! She panted between breaths. Actually, there's a river ahead and... The group burst out of the clearing and a raging river ahead. Megan's eyes widened as she took in the sight of a long, serpentine-like monster with dark violet scales, a lighter underbelly with a large shock of orange hair, and a mismatched mustache of orange jutting directly from below the left nostril, and a purple from the right. He clutched an orange earth pony wearing a cowboy hat and his comparatively spindly arms, thrashing about and roaring. Reflexes took over as he raised the rifle to her shoulder, spreading out and planting her feet firmly in the ground. With a deft motion, she disengaged to safety and sighted the monster. I've got it! She shouted, but paused. No, I don't have a clear shot! Twilight blinked and looked up at Megan. Her mouth dropped, and she drooped to her hind legs, dumping Spike to the ground while waving her hose about. No! Don't press the trigger! She half yelled. That's Steven there! He's a friend of ours! Megan slowly looked down at the purple unicorn. His name is... Steven? The informed named Steven continues rattling about, as Applejack struggled his grip. No, Applejack! It's not worth it! That dragon there is the meanest creature in the Everfree Forest, darling! He waved his slate. My hair! My hair! All this messing around is kicking up the waves and giving me frizzy hair! Applejack bucked her legs and twisted her neck. Let it go, Steven! That big old pile of dinner killed my friends! He torched her Twilight Spike like it was nothing! And Rainbow Dash. She caught it and just tried to save their lives! The kicking and bucking slowed down, and Applejack hugged in Steven's arms like a wet rag. My friends are gone, and there wasn't nothing I could do to help them. Dash flew over and hovered right beside Applejack. She reached over and tapped the orange surf pony on the shoulder. I never knew you cared, she said, smirking. Applejack's head whipped around, and she bucked, launching herself out of Steven's grasp and tackling Dash to the riverbank below. You're alive! She cried out, landing with a thud. Not for long! Dash groaned as she rolled her eyes. She looked up at Applejack as she laid on top of her. Hey, a little personal space, she said, wiggling out of Applejack's grip. She dusted her wings off before wrapping her forelegs around her friend in a hug. And did you really think that some dragon could take out the most awesome Pegasus in Equestria? She leaned forward, allowing her hope to reach up and wipe at the sudden dampness in her eyes. Applejack broke the hug as Twilight, Fluttershy, Rarity, Pinkie Pie, and Spike ran up. Applejack embraced Twilight and slapped Spike on the back, sending the dragon stumbling a bit. Twilight shook her head at Applejack. Applejack, I appreciate your loyalty to us, but please don't do anything like that again! She let out a sigh and her head lowered. I don't think it would sit right with me in the herd if I was in any way complicit in you getting hurt. Pinkie Pie walked up to Applejack's side. She flung her arms around her fellow Earth pony. Don't ever do that again! She choked out. The party wouldn't be the same without you. Applejack glanced away, her cheeks turning red. I'll guess so, Sugar Cube. She closed her eyes and grimaced. When I saw the balloon go up, and I thought my friends were dead, something inside me just snapped, and I ran off. I'm not sure I was in the right mind, a wrong mind, or in a mind at all. She looked up at Twilight, while Pinkie Pie let go of the hug. Eyes bright with unzed tears. I can't promise anything, but I'll try. She turned around and craned her neck to look up at Steven. Thanks, Steven. I'm mighty grateful to you for stopping me from making such a big mistake. She chuckled slightly, scratched the back of her crest, wrestling her pony mane tail. I am sour about your hair. Steven fluffed his hair with one hand and waved her off with the other. Oh, think nothing of it, Applejack! She reached down and pulled a giant-sized mirror from underneath the wire and looked herself over. I think I need to change my look anyway. This look is so last season. Okay, Striker, I would like to thank you for giving me the first chance I've ever had to actually do the voice of Steven in any of these live reads. Applejack suddenly turned back and looked up as the sound descended upon her. Hey, howdy. Megan flipped to safety on her rifle, slung it over her shoulder. Her mouth opened and closed several times before her mouth turned up. Hello, Applejack. She suddenly dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around the pony, pulling her in for a hug. Applejack stood there a moment before raising her forelegs and returning the hug. She looked to the side at Twilight, eyes wide and lips twisted. Okay, please let go, she said. You're kinda scaring me, darling. Megan released the hold and wiped her eyes. Her head darted around as she swallowed. Sorry, my name's Megan. It's just, you look like an old friend of mine. She choked out. She rose to her feet and smoothed out her jacket. So, out of the forest and back to Ponyville? Dash flew over, stopping mere inches from Megan's face. All right, that's it! She shouted, jabbing her forelegs. I was going to wait until we got out of the Everfree Forest and some explanation for your weird behavior, but I've had it! She crossed her forelegs in front of her chest before throwing them out. Who are you? What are you? And why do you act so... Dash stopped, speaking as she yanked down the tail by her multicolored tail. Applejack! Applejack spat the tail from her mouth and glanced at her friend as she turned and stared. Rainbow Dash, quit! She said I looked like an old friend of hers, and that's fine and dandy. She shook her head and rolled her eyes. I mean, seriously! She looked back up at Megan, smiling widely, tucking nervously. My sorry about that, Megan. Dash's heart is in the right place. Her brains! She trailed off and resumed her stare down at the Pegasus. Promise to behave? Des grunted, and Applejack let go. Fluttershy stepped forward, shivering.
But maybe we should wait until we get back to Ponyville?
A sudden burst in the air sent her up into the air, yelping, "Eep!"
Please.
Twilight looked at Megan, staring her in the eyes. You promise, you swear to tell us what's going on when we get back to Ponyville? Megan placed a hand on her chest and nodded to the unicorn. Cross my heart and hope to die, stick a needle in my eye, she said. All the ponies and Spike backed up, rarely visibly recoiling and wincing. What an awful saying, she said. A needle in the eye? How ghastly! She put a foreleg to her forehead and kneeled over, sighing dramatically. Megan blinked and opened her mouth, then closed it. She raised a hand and waved the unicorn off. It's just a saying, she muttered. She shook her head and turned back to the path leading away from the river. I swear I'll tell you everything, although you might not believe it. She paused and chuckled, rubbing her eyes, and the tears suddenly there. I'm not sure even I believe it. And with that, she resumed walking, slinging her rifle from her shoulder and holding it in her hands. Spike jumped onto Twilight's back, and the latter trotted up to Megan. I'm sorry about the way Dash acted, she said, head bowing slightly. I do appreciate you coming along to help us find our friend. Megan's mouth turned up slightly. Even though I didn't do too much, she joked. Spike shrugged. Hey, not like Twilight and I did much of the— Ow! He cried out as Twilight bucked beneath him. Do you mind?
Not at all,
Twilight retorted, smiling with pure venom. Megan suddenly held up her right arm and checked her wristwatch. How long were we in here? She asked. Her eyes widened and her gait quickened. Oh, man! By the time we get out, my kids will be home! Deb flew on back, her forelegs behind her head. So what? You wrote a note for them. Megan rolled her eyes as he began to run. Yeah, but I didn't expect them to get home before I did. She looked down at Twilight and kept up with her. How do we spend out 3 hours trying to get Applejack? Pinkie Pie suddenly appeared on our left, running backwards, yet still passing Megan. Oh, it's a good thing we didn't have to go all the way to the castle of ruins. It took us all night simply to get there the first time. And with that, she turned and shot off down the path. Applejack ran out to Megan's side. Y'all might want to come back on the pace, sugar. We got a long road ahead of us. Megan nodded and slowed down. Thanks, Applejack. She looked down to Twilight. Sounds like you might have a story or two to tell me once we get out and I spill the beans. Twilight's eyes lost focus for a moment before she snapped back to the present. You have no idea. Far to the west of Equestria lay mountain ranges studding into the sky, vast barren expanses of rock and wide open plains, and valleys that cut through them like wounds in the Fairy Valley itself. This was the land of the Dragon Clans, who claimed the Celestia Forsaken area as their own. A dark haze clung into the air as dozens of great beasts flew about, occasionally blotting out the sun itself. They dug into the earth for their food, and used their fiery breath to forge weapons and slumbered in deep caves. 12 of the most powerful gathered in one particular valley, the Valley of the Chieftains. Each one was the head of a particular clan of dragons, and each one laid on a bed of gold and jewels. They snorted fire, and smoke curled from their lips as they awaited the 13th member.
Where is he?
A red-scaled dragon named Jormund said, his long neck and hand crying along.
Oh, be patient.
A somewhat smaller Eastern dragon by the name of Maylong sprang out, writhing about on her horn. She paused and glared at Jormund.
Each day we come here to set the laws and directions of our clans, and each day you ask the same stupid question. He is the king. He comes when he comes.
Jormund hissed, but a shadow descending caught his attention. He and the rest of the lords looked up as a great dragon flew overhead, circling several times before landing in the only other area left in the valley. Unlike the others, he hunched down on his hind legs and tail, supporting his body weight, and instead of letting gold do it for him. His scales were violet, darkened with age, and with a lighter underbelly and a magnificent row of spines growing down his back. King Spiker the Old crossed his arms and looked out at the other lords. It is good to see you, he rumbled. The other lords bowed their heads in return. And we, you, Jormund hissed.
And while we have waited for you, the Ursa has grown bolder by the minute. Even now, the beasts attack on our outer lands and the Griffin Empire. I know of what is going on.
Spikehead interrupted.
I am Spikoran the Old, not Spikoran the Feeble. The bears are gathering, almost as if guided by some force.
He rubbed his chin, rusking his chin whiskers.
But what could control the Ursa Majors in such a way?
Meilong uncurled.
There are stories of an Ursa incumbent in the everfree forest of Equestria, Spikoran. I remember them rising up as an army under Nightmare Moon.
She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Spikoran bared fangs, capable of tearing through solid steel. It snorted a billow cloud of smoke.
Luna was freed from her chains of hatred nearly a year ago, Meilong. Nightmare Moon is no more.
His head ducked down. No more.
As you say, Spikoran, but what of those teens? I doubt they just vanished into the air.
Another dragon wearily lifted his head from his horn and spoke up.
Meilong, those stupid theories about Luna being possessed are just that. Stupid ideals. And she was jealous, and that is not.
Meilong went around hissing.
And you will bet your tongue, Druis, or I will remove it from you. I knew Luna before Nightmare Moon, and lonely as she was, but not to that extent. Something happened to her, and I will—
Enough!
Spikehead shouted, letting loose a torrent of flame. He waited a bit before speaking once more.
Charmin, if necessary, there will be a hunt against the Ursas. We will drive them from our borders and back to the northern tundra.
He chuckled lowly.
It has been a while since I tasted Ursa flesh.
While the other Ursa lords joined in laughter, there was a puff of smoke, almost unnoticed with all the other haze in the air, until it resolved itself into a small scroll. Spikoran's eyes narrowed as he spied it, and he held out his hand. The scroll hovered over the palm and stayed there until he lifted it up. Wizened eyes focused on the comparatively tiny letters.
It cannot be. Surely this must be a mistake.
Druis looked over from his horn.
What is it?
Spikoran did not respond, instead looking up to the sky. His mind deep in thought of the past at similar times. Of one dear old friend.
If this is a trick, Celestia, I will most be displeased.
Dear Spikoran the Old, a rogue dragon has appeared in the Everfree Forest, threatening the citizens of a small town named Ponyville. Among them, my prized student Twilight Sparkle. I request aid in dealing with this interloper before any lives are lost. Also, this will be hard to swallow, but Megan has returned. I think you need to get here as soon as possible. Princess Celestia of Equestria.
Spikoran rose.
There are matters in Equestria that require my attention. There is a rogue dragon in the Everfree Forest, threatening our town.
Jorn rose to his feet.
But what of our problems here? We can easily send a detachment of soldiers to kill some interloper that refuses to leave Equestria.
Spikoran's eyes narrowed. He held out his hand, and the scroll floated away, hovering in front of each of the dragon lords. Meilong tilted her head around as he read.
Megan. That name sounds familiar to me.
She turned to stare at Spikoran.
I believe you mentioned her a few times when you were reminiscing of past glories when you lived at Palatine's estate.
Spikoran started.
Past goose, you mean?
The scroll floated back and rolled itself once more. He reached down and, with a tug, pressed over the loose over scale of his armor. The scroll floated into it, and he resealed it.
Charmin, you stand on your own legs. It is a good sign, young one. Perhaps one day you shall take my place.
Spikoran suddenly leaped at the younger dragon, tackling off the horn and pinning him to the wind-set ground.
But not today!
He suddenly rose and held out a claw hand.
I leave you to organize the attacks against the Ursa horde, Sormin. And if I do not return in 3 days' time, lead our people to victory.
Sorman looked at his lord over, and taking his hand to rising his feet.
It shall be done so, my king,
he hissed out, thumping his chest.
All hail Spycora the Old!
Spycora returned to salute and turned to Mei Long.
Care to join me,
I might need your wisdom and counseling in this,
my old friend?
And with that, he unfurled the great leathery wings, and flapped down, and he jumped into the air, soaring to the sky. Mei Long's head held up.
Wait for me!
She cried out, before contrarily tiny wings began buzzing. She snaked into the air, twisting and turning as he joined Spycora the Old on his way to Equestria.